My name's Aaron Olive. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Eton Solutions. I've had the pleasure to work with Jesse and Dario over the last few years. So you guys, if you want to give a quick intro, who you are, organization you're working with, and then we'll get into about. So Dario, start with you.
Hi everybody, my name is Dario. I'm the CIO at NKSFB LLC, which is a business management firm out of Los Angeles, serving ultra high net worth individuals in the entertainment space primarily.
Jesse George, managing partner at Shade Tree Advisors. We're a multifamily office targeted towards the larger, more complex end of ultra high net worth space. And we're kind of a holistic service for everything a family office would need.
Yeah. And just about Murali. So we'll get right into it. I think, everybody in this room has used ChatGPT, and Murali just talked a little about the personal productivity side. I think the first question we have is when you're thinking about, enabling one of your staff versus putting an enterprise type tool out, what are some of the considerations and what have been some of the challenges that you do it to really get some of that, I call it scale. And I think, Dario, you might be a good person to start, being you have a large organization, diverse staff like that.
Sure. As AI became such a household name, the challenge that we ran into from a technical perspective as the head of IT for our company was more about training and informing users on how to properly use it. Some of the hallucinations that we like to call it at Murali pointed out were real issues, particularly in dealing with numbers, right? So we wanted to make sure that users really understood how to use the product, right? How to engage with it and how to safely engage and get results that were actually producing real results that they needed. So that was kind of the first step, was really around training and identifying how to train them, how to do that.
Yeah, I'd say a good point too. If you want to have a good co-pilot, to use the term digital employee, a good one, right? So that's good. Jesse, anything on your side? We're thinking about your staff doing something a little bit quicker, or a process that you're putting in place for the whole.
Yeah, well, I'd say you approach the two a little differently. Obviously, for the individual use case, Copilot, I agree with Dario said. It's just learning the tricks. Drop a trust into GPT and say, summarize this for me. And I've had this happen actually last month, where I had an analyst present me with, here's the distribution terms. I'm like, I knew in my head that wasn't right. And so something as well, training them how to enter, say, summarize all of these provisions that I want to know from this document, and also include in the next column the exact source, the language, and the page it's found on. Yeah. And so just training them how to do some of the prompts, so you're getting better outcomes from it.
And I think to double tap on that a bit, the next question we talk about is accuracy. It's auditability. How do you know where those results came from? Jesse, I think your team started with documents, for example, tagging documents. Can you talk a little bit about how when you're going through the implementation, how you iterated on it so that you got to a certain, call it, accuracy rate that was acceptable for you? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think when you're starting out, starting to put AI into the enterprise level, those tools, not every company has the same process. Not every document's the same. So AI does take time, just like a human being, to be trained on the uniqueness of your company and your processes. So you have to enter it as an iterative process. And the other thing I think it's important is to never expect AI to be perfect, because as Murali mentioned, where does it get its data? It's usually from data populated by humans. So ultimately, we kept testing it on trying to find things that were higher reward, lower risk, and trying to take a fixed group of data and keep running it and measuring it. And eventually you're getting accuracy starting in 70%, going up to 80, and then you hit a point where you just say it's futile at this point to try to keep getting it to 100, because if we hit 98.9%, I can say that's as good or better than our current human accuracy rates. And so, and the other thing is you got to be comfortable knowing that the portion that's wrong and just making sure if it is wrong, that's not mission critical. So if you have a statement tagged to the wrong account, okay, you'll find it. If it's tagged to the wrong client relationship and they have a portal and can see that, that is mission critical. So just distinguishing between what's acceptable errors and what's not. Nothing's gonna be perfect right now.
Yeah, I think what came to mind was earlier around data governance and data classification, right? And so tagging documents, making sure that they're stored in the right place, that they're properly tagged with the right, classification, so that what it's data, good data in, good data out. If you have bad data, or if you have just kind of unstructured data, and the system doesn't really know what to do with it, it's going to make assumptions. It's going to kind of assume things on your behalf. If you ever have tried to give it a document and say, you were mentioning this, or summarize this for me, and without giving it real detailed points to pull out for you, you're not going to get good data. So it's only going to use the data that it has, and then make assumptions to fill in the gaps. And so it's about classification. It's about telling it what you really need out of it, and making sure that you cross-check that on the back end and asking it for citations. You realize, so good data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out. That's kind of what we've talked about.
And the human is there to kind of guide it along the way. We can be the co-pilot back.
If I may, right, I'll speak for people who were frustrated with the AI, right? Because you guys implemented it the correct way. And a number of people do something called straight-through processing, right? Which is, the system is fully automated. It comes to the endpoint. And there are many activities that fall into straight-through processing. But a lot of activities that humans do require judgment, validation, checking, and so on. Right? So when you put something through an invoice processing, then you say, the number didn't match, the amount is not right, it's not allocated. You get frustrated, and invest a lot of time trying to make that AI move from 95% to 99.99, right? Just remember, at some point, there's going to be a declining return, right? For those who've used Copilot or ChatGPT, and everyone can speak to it, right? The first prompt, right, is either binary wrong or yes, it's pretty good. Then you get like a 7 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, right? You do the second prompt, might get 6 out of 7 or 8, but you try the third or the fourth prompt, it starts going backwards, right? Most of your experience. And that's the way to view is you get it right to a level, and there is something in the process, whether it's a human or whatever that you put in place, that validates that, right? So the key things I think that was successful at Shade Tree and NKSFB, right, was you had visionary people that recognize, and because of their technology savviness, right, what technology could do and what technology couldn't do, was choose the application, choose the process, right, that didn't require it to be perfect. And the thing to remember is the AI that you're using right now is the worst it ever can be, because in 3 months, it's going to be better. In 6 months, it's going to be even better. Right? And the problem that you have, which is you get a 80% recognition rate or even a 70% recognition rate, is going to disappear, and it's going to be 90 in 6 months or a year.
Yeah, and I think even to expand on that early you can start too, I think we have an example when you talk about short-term versus long-term, value. Doing something that's end-to-end, it's going to do 100 steps, for example, might not be the best way to start with this. I think we have an example, when you think about private equity statements, right? We first started going out, getting cap call notices and valuation documents, and just getting them from the portals and storing them. You want to talk a little bit about how we eventually grew that into more of all the way through the last mile processing with Fine. So I don't know if that's one really, client we had when we were doing that type of work and starting with just documents.
Sure. So what happens with data when you extract from portals? The older technology, and the technology has been around for 10, 12 years. They use machine learning, right? And so machine learning is you train it with different types or use RPA. But if there's a slight change in the screen, or there's normally it's two-factor authentication, there's a SMS or authenticator you have to do. But sometimes it'll pop up and ask you a CAPTCHA, right? Because these funds don't like robots coming in, right? or it'll pop up and ask you to say there's a change in terms and conditions you have to click. So it breaks the system and then humans have to come in, right? The new AI technology since 2023 is something called computer use, which allows you to go to a page and scrape the page. AI then reasons it and then figures out where to go, right? But it's still not perfect, right? And we were happy initially when we rolled it out in 2024 with a 70% rate, because that's 7 out of 10 that you didn't have to do manually, right? And now we get something like 97, 96% success rate, but there's always failure, right? And what the software tells you is if I can't do it, sends it to a human, the human steps in and then downloads the file, right? So just want to let you know a very good example where AI isn't ready to do the job with a high degree of accuracy all the time, but it's good enough, right, to do the job for what it is, so long as you put the human in that thing.
What are some of the ways that when you're looking at a project, you're starting to measure it? You know, qualitative, quantitative factors. What are some things that maybe you guys are thinking about when you're either picking a project or 3 months in? Is this worth it, or do we need to think about changing something?
Sure. I think everybody here running a business probably knows your list of things you'd like to solve for, the parts that are most painful of your operation. So we have that list, and I think the starting point is comparing that to what's feasible and trying to get some victories early on, because I've noticed two causes of skepticism from staff when you're rolling this out. One is, this is going to replace me, and so I view it as an enemy, and I want it to fail sometimes. That's not everybody, but there are people like that. The other is, if it doesn't work right, people write it off. And so you've experienced that. We're like, hey, we got this new software application, we're rolling it out, and they're like, well, this is terrible. It's a lot harder to get them to go back a second time and say, no, this is good, go use it. So trying to get some reinforcement of picking a project that's feasible and will be impactful. And the way we've measured that is really for the beginning tasks is time savings. So the one examples are just pulling custodian statements, which we have thousands and thousands a month that we're required to archive. We've reduced our human time on those by over 80%. And that's very real. And now those employees are doing something that they enjoy doing more than logging out, pulling down and tagging documents.
Yeah, we're looking for the pain points, right? What are the and finding those low hanging fruit, right? What are the things that are going to make an immediate impact? And as a technologist, I like to remind people, particularly as a corporate IT department, we're not AI engineers. That's why we trust companies like Eton and other software solutions to do the heavy lifting of developing the tools around this. We've engaged with Eton on that piece of it, and that's one thing that we've done differently in terms of invoice processing and things like that has helped us achieve some efficiency there. The other piece too is low-hanging fruit is time and billing. We have an AI tool that we've introduced because we're not going to develop the AI tool, but the software vendors are out there developing that product. So it's about partnering with the right products, right? And finding it and making sure you're understanding what the pain point is. The efficiency comes through, right? Like it's sort of perceived value, I believe, because does the user of the tool feel like they are more efficient because of it? Can you produce results from that? And time and billing is an example. We went from taking an hour to 2 hours of logging time and entering your time to 5 minutes. That's a pretty significant decrease in efficiency or increase in efficiency for the user base. And it actually helped them feel better about what they were doing by using an AI tool. So it's really about finding those right pain points, getting some success markers around them to show them that this is a value add, and it's not taking away from what their work product is, and starting to introduce it. I like to use the example of a hammer. There's lots of different types of hammer. I'm not a builder, but I've heard this. There's framing hammers and there's mallets and all kinds. And so each one has its different use. And yes, all of them will hammer the nail in, but they'll do it a little bit differently, right? And so that's what AI is like. It's like you have to find the right tool for the job. But if you don't know how to use the tool, well, then you're just going to bust your finger open. Because I've done that, because I'm not a builder.
Yeah, I get that, and that's a good segue into some of the, I'll call it, challenges of scaling, right? You think, we've been doing the same process for 20 years. Let's just make the AI do that same process, and it's you need to rethink a little bit of how you're approaching data, approaching people. Murali, one for you is scaling beyond just a prototype. I think when we talk with a lot of our clients, we have an initial solution, and then we do a pilot. And then those pilots, sometimes they scale and we grow either the value we're delivering, or we scale it out across a lot of people. Sometimes it may falter. You have some examples of why you lose momentum from the hype to rolling it out to the entire organization.
And I think what happens is AI isn't a one-on-one replacement for the steps that you have, right? In any time when you put AI in, there's going to be some re-engineering, because you have this bot or agent, whatever you call it, right, that's sitting in there and doing it, and it does it a little bit differently, right? And because it does it differently, and most of this generation of AI tools are what we call statistical engines, right? And because they're statistical engines, through some magic of statistics, it's going to give you a result, right? You ask it for a decision, it'll tell you something. Next time you ask that same question, right, it will give you a different answer, right? And it's hard to have repeatability, transparency, explainability, all the things that auditability, right? All of those things. And therefore, for it to scale, the biggest issue is trust, right? So you can have a 60, 70%, and you have to find a way of replacing the traditional trust mechanism of the human with some other alternative mechanism. And I'll use an analogy. If you look at Amazon, right, when it started selling books online, you usually go to the bookshop, you can browse the book, right, look through it and say, oh, okay, this is what I want, based on the table of contents, and scanning a few pages and you buy the book, right? Or because of some other comment or review, right? Now, Amazon didn't allow a physical review of that book. And what it started was providing comments of what people said about the book, right? And later, they provided sample pages. But it was all about building trust, right? So, I'm obviously speaking at 50 or 100,000 feet. A big issue of scaling is there is a lack of trust, okay, of the results, the process, and all the other components that make it an enterprise. So if you cannot have a forensic to tell you how you arrived at, it cannot be because it's magic, right? Or the magic of statistics. So causal AI and other things that you have to put in place, right, to make that work has to be put. Once it's put in, then it gets scaled.
For both of you, if either of you had something, you're doing something for a month and you said, oh, we need to pivot, or we need to change scope, or any examples where you've had to be adaptable, working with a partner to see something different, so that the staff feel like it's still a successful investment and they need to work towards it. Indian?
Sorry.
It's with new technology, I found it's about the slow burn. If you go too fast, people are resistant to change. So again, those quick hits, those small wins go a long way. We've definitely had to pivot at times where we've rolled too fast and had to scale back and sort of reevaluate the direction we're going or the impact that it was having on the staff, particularly timing, right? If tax time is not a great time to roll out new products. That's always a hard lesson, even though they, the executives may want to be pushing out the time and billing software at the same time because it's going to impact the bottom line. So I think timing is everything with product, and small wins, getting those sort of experts to be champions of the tool and sort of teaching each other how to use the product, how to engage with it, are ways to kind of overcome some of those challenges.
Yeah, I'll second, which is the pivot we had was stop wanting to be the guinea pig for everything. And, early on, I want to be the first one in everything, thinking that would give us the advantage and everything, but you got to be mindful of the impact that does have on your staff. And eventually said, Jesse, please stop. So we've definitely slowed down, recognizing, they have their day-to-day jobs, throwing a hand grenade in of hey, this is going to work, and nothing works right out of the box as you expect it. And so, productivity goes down, frustration goes up. We've more pivoted, adopted an approach of take one thing, like moving 5 balls down the football field, use an analogy, take one, get it across the goal line, prove it, and then roll it out. And sometimes sitting back and just waiting for somebody else to solve it, and then getting on their coattails isn't a bad strategy once in a while.
Yeah. And you mentioned that some people in the office are saving 80% on documents, but two things. One, just morale in the office. When some of these things do get to completion, right? You're seeing some positive benefits, and then the other side is, you talked a little bit earlier. We were chatting about hiring, the way you're thinking about hiring, right? It's not, we're going to go, take people away from the business, but how can I expand the business? So two things, like when something worked well, you have a good example of people are excited and they see the benefit. And then two, how are you thinking about your business long term with some of these tools in place and being able to leverage, to your point, other people doing some of this work and leading into that. Let's do Jesse to start, and I'll be all right.
Yeah, I think, so he said some of that early validation, people are concerned, it's going to take my job. And it's like, hey, we just relieved 80% of your time and we didn't lay anybody off. Like, what we're doing is asking you to now help with these things. So it's kind of a cascade effect of elevating what they're doing, which is giving them opportunities to grow. That's taking off someone else's plate that they might have viewed as a nuisance. But, this person's a new role. It's exciting for them. So we actually have seen a lot of excitement, and apprehension has now turned to requests coming in and saying, hey, can AI do this? Can AI do this? And it is starting to make us think about who we're hiring in the future, how many people we're hiring, because I said that our firm, we don't want to, and we have no intention of letting people go and having AI replace them. But, to be honest, it will impact the pace of hiring in the future, for sure. And so it causes us to think about what roles are we looking to hire for. Right now, if we have a senior people spending a fair amount of their time doing, I would say, complicated data entry, but repeatable. And so it might take longer time to train AI on that because there's some complexity to it, but freeing them up and not have them spending their time on that could actually impact higher level, let's say, technical people we were looking to hire, because the ones we have now have a lot more free time.
Anything out there?
I mean, what I would add on is that I believe that there are going to be two types of workers in the near future. There are going to be AI-enabled workers that know how to use the tool, and non-AI enabled workers, and those that have adopted and have come to terms with the fact that AI is part of life, and this is what we're going to do to make us more productive. That they will continue to grow and develop and have greater opportunities. I think those that reject it or are not willing to engage with it are going to see their jobs start to kind of flounder and not really see the success that they may want to see in their jobs over time.
Right. And then just going down, I think each of you, what is either for your business or big picture, I think for both of you guys in your business, what is the next most compelling AI use case you're looking at beyond maybe what you're doing right now? And then even if you want to add anything into the big picture down the road.
There are two cases. I've said for a long time, I think if you just look at the flow of information in our industry, some of it is really insane. You have a private equity fund that has all of their books, and they go and pay a tax preparer to prepare the taxes, or firms to prepare their capital account statements, fund admins, and they go and take all of that and convert it into a PDF, put it out in some portal, and then you got to pull it back down. You got to take that all out of a PDF, put it back into different data sets, and get it back into another tax return or another investment report. And if you step back and look at it, it's kind of insane, the amount of productivity loss throughout that whole process. So both on the alternative investment, right, because you have data feeds for public markets, and a lot of that is developed. It's pretty homogenous now. But in the private markets, because of all the various fund admins, all the different nature of capital account statements, and then I will also extend that to taxes and K1s, just the differences in footnotes. You could have 50-page K1s, 2-page K1s, trying to eliminate all the human intervention, getting it from the source point to the end use point is the biggest opportunity I see for AI for us from a productivity standpoint, and those are going to be the two biggest focal points. Although I put both of those in the buckets of keep lower expectations, and recognize it's going to take a little while and more iterations than things like naming statements or downloading documents or populating an AP entry.
No.
Yeah, I think that the impact that AI is immediately having will define what we see it do in the future. Right now, I think that a lot of this automation piece and grabbing data, what we're really going to see is a transition into data analytics and the impact that it has in that world, because we are now accessing more data than we ever have before. Our data continues to grow and grow. That's the new oil, as Murali pointed out. And so how we leverage AI to capture that data and then deliver great analytics about our clients, their financial statements and all of that will become more accessible to them, and they will engage with their financial picture at a greater level. And I think that's kind of where we're going to see that transition over time of being that tool to delivering actual results of real data and what it means for their future, I think.
Yeah, good. Murali, anything you're seeing from a lot of our clients, prospects, things they're looking ahead to?
I think what Jesse and Dario said is spot on. It is the areas that most of our customers are looking at and are most interested in is the document processing, and then obviously the analytics associated with investments. And then another area not mentioned here is the month-end close. Right? There is a lot of work associated with matching the accounting book of records with the investment book of records with the capital book of records, and then doing the mark-to-market statements. And in many cases, people also do the month-end reconciliation. Although you might be getting a data feed, you would need to match whatever the bank or custodian statements against what's in the system. A lot of these AI is well suited for. It doesn't, as Jesse pointed out, it doesn't do it fully, but there's enough that you already start seeing productivity improvements. So we're seeing more and more AI being used in those areas, right? The month end and so on. Obviously, things like legal research, trusts, doing stress tests on estate plans, all these are what we call long tail applications. Many people are using it, but not at scale. The areas that Jesse and Dario mentioned are those that across the board, all our AI customers are using.
Yeah. Perfect. So last question, and I think it's good to get perspective from all of you, is for people just starting out, where do they put their attention? What are some of the things they should think about for adoption and putting a roadmap for AI?
Again, I think it goes back to finding what the pain points are. Where are the things that you're spending the most amount of time on? Engage with a strong AI vendor. Leverage the software vendors that you're working with to see what they're already doing to solve some of these problems or find them. Work with your IT people to ask them questions and see where they may see some opportunity around those things. I think that there's a lot of moving parts right now in this space, and a lot of things will take time to shake out, as we've done with these big technology changes over the last 25 years. We've seen a lot of growth in different areas, and it takes time for some of the smaller players to shake out and the bigger players to buy them out and make it a dramatic impact. Right now we have a lot of small players in the market trying to figure out what AI tech looks like and where it's going to add value, and we're going to start to see them sort of converge into larger products sets, because no one company is doing it all perfectly. So I guess that's good.
Yeah, I would echo. I think anyone here who's dealt with fintech, accounting systems, any software your company is highly dependent on, there's a reason they call it a sticky industry, because the amount of time it takes to train your staff on a system, all of your data is in there. And so I think the tricky part is looking at AI isn't much different than kind of the old SaaS model, from the standpoint of it can be very disruptive to the company and put it at risk, in a sense, if you make yourself completely dependent on an unknown quantity or an unproven one, or you got to put them through a transition. And so our natural starting point has been, what AI tools could our existing provider offer or could integrate with? Because a hospital billing system is going to be different from a construction system and a family office system and all the info and processes. And there are specific companies now that you all use in software for those specific practices. And so it's also going to take a long time for the AI to kind of develop that same expertise, understand your processes, why it's important. And your existing software already has that knowledge. Your staff knows how to use it. So, my main thing I'll say, I always view our business relationships, you should never take each other for granted, right? And so, I tell Murali all the time, like, they have a duty to be building out those tools. So we're not tempted to look elsewhere, because the reality is, if the market passes your provider by, you're going to hit a point where you're like, we don't have a choice. It's worth it. So, I think going out, pushing your existing providers to give you the tools that you're seeing and are out there is going to be a lot less painful than trying to make a transition. So it's just kind of reiterating the partnership approach, versus trying to build it from scratch, because I agree with Dario that there's a lot of companies that are out pitching us now aren't going to be here in a year. We know that. And so you want to get on a horse that will, be able to take you where you want to go.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, that's good. Murali, I don't know if there's anything you want to close us out on, but
No.
perfect. Well, that was well said. I appreciate everybody, appreciate the panel, and
Any questions?
I don't know if we have time for questions, or
That was one, yeah.
one question.
Hey, Beck.
Probably answered everything.
See you.
Perfect.
Bye.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.